Did you know that hitting $200,000 invested actually means you are already about halfway to $1 million? At first glance, that sounds absolutely ridiculous to most people. How can $200,000 possibly be halfway to $1 million when it is literally only 20% of the total numerical value? That is the psychological and mathematical trick that keeps the vast majority of people from ever becoming truly wealthy. Once you see the real math behind the timeline, it becomes obvious why 200,000 is the true halfway point of your journey. If you find this perspective helpful and want to see more deep dives into your financial future, please take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more insights. As we stand here in the early months of 2026, many of us are looking at our brokerage accounts and wondering if all this effort is still worth the sacrifice. The world has changed significantly over the last few years, but the fundamental laws of compound interest remain as solid as a mountain. Let us take a simple and realistic example that fits the high-cost world we live in today. Imagine you start from zero and invest exactly $110 every single week. That is roughly the cost of a few impulse purchases on Amazon, a moderate daily habit, or just one nice night out at a local restaurant. If you earn a long-term 7% inflation-adjusted return, there are no gimmicks or magic tricks involved here. There are no get-rich-quick schemes or unrealistic income assumptions. This is just pure, stubborn, and disciplined consistency. Now, I want you to watch very closely at what happens to that money over the long arc of time. The first few years are what many financial experts quietly call the slow grind. This is the part that nobody ever brags about on social media because it feels painfully uneventful and boring. With your steady $110 per week and a 7% return, you do not even crack six figures for a very long time. It takes until around year 12 for your balance to finally reach that first $100,000 milestone. During this 12-year stretch, it feels like you are doing almost all of the heavy lifting yourself. And that is because you actually are doing the work. At the $100,000 mark, you have put in a little over $68,000 of your own hard-earned money. Meanwhile, the market has contributed only about $34,000 in total growth. Your investments are technically compounding, but it still feels like they are taking small baby steps and wobbling around rather than sprinting forward. This phase is the financial equivalent of pushing a massive, heavy boulder uphill with no end in sight. You pass a sign on the trail indicating that the summit is approaching, but your legs are tired and the progress feels almost invisible to the naked eye. You are showing up every single week. You are being consistent, and the progress is real, but it is slow and often deeply discouraging. There is no big jump, no wow moment, and no visual proof that the future payoff is going to be worth the sacrifice of today. Anyone who makes it through this 12-year part deserves a medal, because staying committed for more than a decade with such modest results is genuinely hard for the human brain to process. But here is the massive upside that most people never stay around long enough to see. Once you clear this stretch, you have survived the toughest part of the entire financial journey. Most people quit before compounding even has a chance to get moving at a high velocity. If you are still in the game at this point, you have already beaten the hardest level of the entire financial machine. In 2026, the pressure to spend is higher than ever, yet those who resist are about to see a miracle. Once you have made consistent investing a core part of who you are, something noticeable starts happening in the background of your account. It is subtle at first, but then you realize your portfolio is finally starting to carry its own weight and momentum. With that same steady $110 per week, your balance climbs to about $200,000 around year 18. That is a double in value from just 6 years earlier. Remember how long it took you to get to that first $100,000? It took 12 long and grueling years of consistent effort. But the jump from $100,000 to $200,000 took only half that amount of time. When you break down these numbers, the entire story of your life begins to change dramatically. Your contributions now total roughly $105,000, while your investment growth has surged to about $95,000. For the first time in your life, your money is not just tagging along like a passive passenger on a long bus ride. It is nearly keeping pace with your own physical labor. This is a major turning point that financial analysts call the tipping point, or the moment of crossover. This is the moment when compounding stops being a boring concept in a textbook and starts being a real partner in your household. You are still making your weekly deposits, but now your portfolio is working right beside you, matching your effort almost dollar for dollar. It is almost like you have a clone of yourself out there in the world, matching your weekly savings and working 40 hours a week just for you. And here is the part that surprises nearly everyone when they finally sit down and see the actual spreadsheets. Hitting $200,000 invested means you are about halfway to $1 million in terms of time. I am not talking about the numerical dollar distance, because obviously 800,000 is much more than 200,000. I am talking about the distance in terms of years spent on the journey. At $200,000, your money starts compounding so rapidly that it is like working overtime without asking for a single extra dollar from you. If you simply keep investing the same amount with the same 7% real return, you will cross that $1 million mark in around year 38. Think about that timeline for a moment and let it sink into your mind. It took 18 years to reach 200,000, and it took another 20 years to reach 1 million. By this point, you have contributed roughly $220,000 in total over your entire working career. The rest of the money, which is more than $780,000, came from your money making more money. You are no longer the primary engine of your financial life. You are just the person adding a little bit of fuel to a massive, self-sustaining machine that does not require you to operate it. The machine now runs itself through the sheer force of mathematics. It still requires patience, but the difference in growth between the first decade and the third decade is like the difference between night and day. So, while 200,000 is technically just 20% of 1 million, it represents the halfway point of your active labor. But things get even better once you realize the massive difference between net worth and investable assets. In 2026, many people feel wealthy because the perceived value of their homes has skyrocketed. However, you cannot use your kitchen cabinets to pay for a flight to Europe. You cannot use the drywall in your house to pay the electric bill when it arrives in the mail. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, the median household retirement savings for those approaching 62 years old is only around $200,000. The tragic problem is that for most of these families, that money is tied up in home equity and depreciating cars, not in liquid accounts. True retirement readiness comes from assets that actually generate income and grow on their own, like stocks, bonds, or retirement accounts. With a $1 million portfolio of liquid assets, the numbers start getting almost ridiculous in a very good way. At that size, you are looking at roughly $100,000 in annual growth before you even account for inflation, or around $70,000 after adjusting for the rising costs of living in 2026. And remember, that is without you lifting a single finger or sacrificing a single hour of your precious life. No overtime, no side hustle, and no selling your time to someone else for a paycheck. Just your money quietly multiplying while you sleep, eat, and travel the world. Because this entire example uses a 7% inflation-adjusted return, those gains translate to the same buying power you have right today. What is even more mind-bending is what happens if you decide to stop contributing entirely once you hit that $1 million mark. Let us say you decide you are done adding new money because you want to spend more today. Even then, that nest egg would double to about $2 million in just a little over 7 years of waiting. With zero additional deposits from your paycheck, your portfolio becomes a self-propelling machine of freedom. Once it reaches a certain size, compounding stops feeling like slow growth and starts acting like a snowball racing down a steep hill. It gains speed and massive weight with every single turn of the wheel. It grows so powerfully that trying to slow it down would be almost impossible for anyone. And this is exactly why $200,000 is the real milestone you should be celebrating with a quiet dinner. It is not about the final number on the screen. It is about the timeline and the immense effort required to get the engine started in the first place. The long, frustrating grind happens during that steep climb to the first $100,000. The second $100,000 happens twice as fast as the first. And every $100,000 after that happens faster and faster until the numbers become a blur of success. People tend to quit during the early years, right before the momentum shifts, because they do not understand how the curve works. They get discouraged by the lack of visible progress in their banking application. But once you hit that $200,000 milestone, you have unlocked a second income stream that never sleeps. It never takes a day off for a holiday, and it never asks you for a raise or a promotion. And you did all of this with nothing more than the cost of one simple dinner out per week. Another thing people often do not realize is just how exhilarating it feels once your portfolio starts gaining real speed. In the early years, it is very easy to look at the market dips and feel like you are losing the game. But once compounding kicks in and your account begins to grow noticeably every month, your entire mindset changes. You stop being afraid of the market fluctuations, and you start looking for ways to feed the fire even more. You might redirect a yearly bonus from work, or tweak your monthly budget to give your investments more fuel to burn. What used to feel like a chore or a painful sacrifice starts to feel like a game that you are winning every single day. Adding to your contributions becomes less about discipline and more about seizing a golden opportunity. If you get a surge in motivation like most people do at this stage, you will likely hit 1 million much faster than the example we just discussed. However, I must be very clear and transparent about one thing. This effect only applies when you actually have $200,000 invested in assets that can compound. A net worth of $200,000 spread across your home equity, your trucks, your furniture, and your electronics does not create this effect. The acceleration only happens when the money is in assets that historically grow faster than the rate of inflation. The S&P 500, for example, has returned roughly 10% per year over the long term, which is about 7% after adjusting for the rising costs of goods and services. Everything in this explanation is based on real historical performance and the laws of math, not on impossible dreams. For anyone who claims this path takes way too long, it is worth stepping back to ask a simple question. What are you really giving up to achieve this level of peace? You are not sleeping in your car or giving up every vacation for the rest of your life to save a few pennies. You do not have to live like a hermit or endure financial misery to make this math work for you. All you are doing is being a little more deliberate and intentional with your choices today. You are cutting back on things you do not really care about and redirecting that small slice of income toward your future self. The trade-off is tiny compared to the massive and permanent reward of total financial freedom. $1 million is not created through suffering or luck. It is built through consistency, extreme patience, and a handful of small choices repeated week after week. This example works precisely because it is realistic for an ordinary person earning an ordinary income in 2026. You do not have to be a genius, a doctor, or a high-paid executive to reach these heights. You just have to stick with a simple plan long enough for the math to take over the driver's seat. And if you wanted to speed things up, even doubling your contributions to $220 per week would shrink the timeline dramatically. Instead of taking 38 years, you would hit 1 million in about 29 years. That is nearly a decade faster without doing anything extreme or radical. It is just a slightly bigger snowball rolling down the same steep hill. If you triple your contribution to $330 per week, you could be there in 24 years. The truth is, your contributions usually get much easier over time as your career and skills progress. As your income increases with promotions or experience, that amount that once felt like a stretch becomes very comfortable. Then, adding an extra $50 here or there does not disrupt your daily life at all. Most people do not notice their cost of living raises because they spend it immediately on a nicer car or a bigger television. But if you redirect just a slice of that upward income drift into your investments, your progress accelerates at a mind-blowing pace. You are not grinding harder at your job. You are simply letting time, income growth, and discipline work together in a beautiful and powerful harmony. In the landscape of 2026, the gap between those who understand this and those who do not is growing wider every day. Wealth is not about what you can buy today, but about what you no longer have to do tomorrow. It is about the freedom to say no to a toxic boss or a soul-crushing commute. Reaching $200,000 invested is not just 20% of the way to the finish line of your life. You have already finished the hardest and most grueling part of the marathon. From this point forward, the invisible hand of compounding takes the lead. Your money starts doing the hard work that you used to do, and you get to watch as your path to that first million becomes a downhill sprint. If you found real value in this deep dive, please let us know in the comments section below. Are you currently in the slow grind phase, or have you already reached your tipping point? We would love to hear your personal story and your goals. Do not forget to hit the like button if this video gave you a new perspective on your savings and your future. And if you want to stay informed about how to navigate the complex financial world of 2026, make sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications. Thank you for watching, and always remember that your future is built one small, intentional choice at a time. Stay consistent, stay patient, and let the math do the rest of the work.